Hey everyone, today I want to do a ranking of all 12 of Christopher Nolan's movies. I just finished watching the last one of these 12 that I hadn't seen, and actually about a week ago there was another one. There was two of his movies I hadn't seen, but after watching one of them, which I'll tell you when I get to it, it absolutely blew me away to the point of where I wanted to talk about it so badly. I just decided I'm going to watch his last movie and do a complete, go through his whole filmography and talk about all 12 of them. Now, this will tell you how much I like Christopher Nolan's movies for the most part before we get into these, because I don't think any of his movies are bad. But if I'm being completely honest, I'd kind of lost all interest of making YouTube videos for the past month or more, because I just was like, I was doing it for fun and it's kind of no longer fun because I'd kind of lost interest in movies after how bad, for me at least, last year's movies were. I haven't seen some of the ones that I still hear really good. I'm gonna see Iron Claw tomorrow, but yeah, I was just like, man, I'm not seeing any movies that are just like getting it and making me even enjoy this. On top of just kind of like things in life that just between those two things, I was just like, I really don't know if I want to do this anymore. Well, at least for now, this movie made me want to get back into this, at least talk about his 12 movies, and that'll tell you at least what I think of him as a director. That something that to me was basically dead, revived it. That I want to talk about this so badly. So when we get to that movie, I will absolutely let you know. But it is towards the top, so that'll tell you. We're starting off with the one I just got done watching right before this, and that was his very first film in like 1980, or I mean 1998. I think is when it came out, and that's Following. It's not a bad movie. Like I said, none of his movies are bad. I just think this one is the probably least rewatchable. Um, and I would say, he's probably my favorite modern director. This movie just feels like it's a 70-minute like film, but it's also like a demo of what Christopher Nolan's movies will become, and it's still very good. I just don't see myself ever wanting to watch it again because the pacing is very slow. I do recommend it still though, just because if you haven't seen it, why not? If it's the one you haven't seen, um, so I'll tell you what each of these movies are about. It some of them more so than others, but Following is about a guy who he's trying to write a story, and he thinks of an idea to start following people around and just see what their everyday life is like, and maybe he'll come up with something. Well, he follows some guy. Guy catches on, and they begin to talk, and they become friends. And he tells them that he robs people, goes in their houses, and what better way to learn about people's lives is to break into their houses and just study how they live. Well, this guy is more of a robber, where the author or the writer is just trying to kind of learn about people. So, one time when they break into this house, he sees that they're breaking into the house of this young woman, and he wants to get to know her. He does, but whenever they start to date, he gets himself involved in her ex-boyfriend's criminal activity, and he starts doing some bad things. Well, overall, it's still very good. It's 70 minutes, and it feels actually longer. I'm not gonna lie. I did have to sit through some ads, but they weren't even that long. They were like, the longest one was like 15 seconds. So yeah, if I only sat through like maybe three sets of ads, and it felt like it was like a 2 hour movie, I was like, man, this movie's dragging. But by the end, I found myself enjoying the overall what had played out. So that comes in at number 12. Next one is probably going to be the one that somebody just absolutely loses their shit on, that I'm putting it at 11. But Inception, just could not get into this movie. I've only watched it once, to be fair. It's just not for me. I was really expecting to love it because I had seen a lot of his other movies at the time. This was before Dunkirk, so this was right around the time I think Interstellar was about to come out, and I was like, I want to watch Inception. I have yet not seen it, and so at that time, I was like, I'd heard so many good things. Finally, watch it. I'm like, you know, my bar was set up here, and I felt like I wasn't so much confused throughout the movie, but I found myself coming in and out of like focus of what was going on to where I was like, oh, what did I miss? Now I like don't even know what's like about to happen, and I'm like, ah. And so, did I like it? Sure. Like I would say I respect it more than I like it. Uh, the filmmaking aspect of it is very good, and I do think it, has such a great cast that I'm probably at some point going to give this another rewatch because I'm like, it's so highly talked about. Maybe it was just I didn't watch it at a great time. That has happened more times than not, where I've like sat down and watched a movie, or sometimes I've absolutely loved a movie that I turn out I'm like, didn't really like that on the second watch, or where I've watched a movie and been like, this sucked, and then I watch it again and I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good. I just wasn't in a good mood for it. So the problem is just since then I have not had any desire to watch Inception again. Maybe one day. But if you're not familiar with this movie, I have the vaguest memory. I just know it's involving Leonardo DiCaprio has this machine that you hook it up and he can go inside your dreams. And I don't even know exactly what they're trying to retrieve from these dreams. I just remember like the streets like folding in on top of each other and things altering like, in a dream like world. But like if you die in the dream, you die in real life type of thing. And I remember his kind of like plot with his wife. That's all I remember, and then some of the cast. So, um, yeah, I'm sure this is a lot of people's favorites, but for me, I just at the time just couldn't get into it. It was a little bit too much for me. So, next at number 10 would be Interstellar. I'm not a big space movie guy, so that more reason than anything. I did find it on my first watch to be very good, though. I was like, I see why someone would absolutely love this movie. I'm just not a space movie guy. There's very few exceptions to that. The emotional aspects of this movie are very good, where he learns that he's lost like 30 years of his life because minutes on this planet where he's on is like years back on Earth, and he's lost so many years that he was hoping he could go back and spend time with his daughter, and he loses so much time with her. Very good in that aspect. It's just not one I see myself ever wanting to rewatch, just because of how it's long. It's a space movie. It's just not really my thing. It's funny though. One of my friends that he's also pretty much seen almost every Nolan movie. Inception and Interstellar are his two favorites, and following I mean, I wouldn't say I disliked it more than those two. I just think it's not even really like a full blown movie. It's 70 minutes, which yes, it's still a movie, but it's like it feels almost like a short compared to his other ones. So, but yeah, Interstellar still very good. I just remember it's something about Earth's resources are like diminishing in the near future, and they have to find a way to I keep Earth alive or something, or find somewhere where people can live, like another planet or something. I can't even remember. And I remember being highly entertained and enjoying myself, but after at the end, I was like, while I quite liked that, I don't see myself wanting to watch it again anytime soon. So, next at number 9 is Insomnia. Saw this once. And again, my memory isn't very good. I watched this right around the same time as Inception. I did like it a little bit more. I just remember Al Pacino as a detective, and I can't remember who his partner is, but I remember the actress is from Million Dollar Baby. She's the main actress. I'm just not good with remembering names off the top of my head. But Robin Williams is like a murderer, and he like is hunting him down in this. It's in Alaska. And I remember there's like this foggy scene, and something happens. I don't want to give it away just in case you've never seen it. That he feels guilty over, and he develops insomnia during this 30 days of sun, which Alaska has 30 days in a row of nothing but sun. The sun does not set, and then 30 days at some point throughout the year where the sun never rises, so it's just dark. And it's during that 30 days of light that he just can't sleep, and it leads to guilt and him not sleeping. And I do want to watch this again. I'm actually probably going to see if it's on any apps or anything to watch, and if not, I'll rent it or something. But um, for now, because I don't have that much of memory, I don't even remember how it ends. I just remember the cast, and by the end on my first watching, thinking this is a little disappointing, but I found it to be it captured my attention throughout just to see how this was going to play out. So, um, and I think that one's actually not his own story. I want to say that he like remade a foreign movie or something. That's like the only one of his movies, at least that I know of. So that's like one of his only not original movies. Um, Next at number 8, kind of deciding in my head right now. I'm gonna go Oppenheimer. Still a very good movie. I probably putting this a little too low for how good of a quality of movie it is. I just again, I don't really see myself wanting to rewatch this one. I will probably say I will like Insomnia more when I rewatch it. I just don't have that much of a memory of it to tell you it's better than Oppenheimer that I just saw 6 months ago, whenever it came out. Um, for me, Oppenheimer, I didn't research the movie whatsoever. I just knew the name. I knew it's about the atomic bomb, and I knew it was Christopher Nolan. Saw the teaser trailer. I tried to avoid everything else, and I thought this was more going to be about not only the making of the atomic bomb, but the war part of the atomic bomb, which there was a small portion of that, but it's more about the political side of his life, and it's more about Oppenheimer himself. And didn't, I don't know why I didn't piece that together. I thought, okay, it'll involve his life a little bit, but I thought it was more about the atomic bomb. So I just walked out like, okay, still a very good movie, and it is in my top 10 of the year. I think I put it like 6th or something. But I just wasn't expecting quite what I got. I'm not a very political person, and I say a good portion of this movie is about communists and communism versus capitalism, and his involvement with friends being in the Communist Party. So, yeah, just very good, but I'm gonna have to wait a while to rewatch this one. I definitely will. I'd say in the future, just not anytime soon. Next is The Dark Knight Rises at number 7. I would definitely say most people would agree this is the weakest of his Batman trilogy. I was disappointed when this came out, but I still have never said it's a bad movie. I still like it a lot, even though the villain is, well, I wouldn't even say Bane's bad. I just think Bane as a character is probably one of the more boring Batman villains. But Tom Hardy did a very good job and made this character so much more interesting. I just think that overall, by the end of the movie, some of the things were like not quite as good as I was hoping. Whether it was just that's the way he wanted the movie, or maybe he had to go through rewrites. I've never researched anything about behind the scenes of this movie, or really most any movies. If I'm being honest, I either hear about it from someone, or I just somehow know about it. But still a very good movie. It falls kind of towards the middle of his, but I've watched this so many times. It was actually filmed where I live in Pittsburgh. My one friend, his dad, got to be an extra in the scene where I think the cops are like running at Bane's guys, and that whole scene, his dad was involved in. So, yeah, I haven't talked to him in years, but back then when this movie came out, me and him were talking all about it. So, but yeah, so number 7 is The Dark Knight Rises. Still very good. I like it a lot, but that is where it falls. Next at number 6 is Memento. This is I actually for the longest time thought this was his first movie. This is the one where I would say he really starts to kind of play with his whole like time playing on its. I don't even know how to time. I don't know how to word it. The sequence of events in the movie not being lined up in a chronological time order is what I'm trying to say. But so the movie starts at the technical end, but moves forward and backward at the same time. It's hard to explain if you've never seen it, but it's a guy who His wife was murdered, and at the same time during this attack, um, he suffered a brain injury that left him with the inability to create new memories for more than 30 seconds at a time. He can hang on to things, but he has to write them down or tattoo it on himself to keep anything meaningful. So a lot of this movie is him talking to people over and over and being like, "Are you this person? Do I know you?" And then explaining his whole situation. And they'll do something to him and completely like betray his trust. But then 30 seconds later, he just doesn't even remember it. And it's interesting. It starts, like I said, at the end. The scene will play out as if like a normal scene would play, but then it cuts like what happened to lead into that scene that we just saw, and it keeps doing that over and over, all the way do you see how this kind of started for him in the beginning, at least, of the movie. And you could watch it either way, from reverse or from start to finish, or finish to start, and it makes sense. So very good movie. If you've never seen it, it's not one that I would say is like the most rewatchable for some people, but I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times, and I space out enough to where I forget the small details to where I'm like, this is still very interesting to me. I saw it like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I've seen it, like I said, 4 or 5 times. So it's every like 2, 3 years I'll see it. But next at number 5 is The Prestige. Here, I'll do it this way. This was probably if I'm remembering correctly, this was the first non-Batman movie of his that I'd seen, and I saw, oh, it's Christopher Nolan, it's Christian Bale, and it's Hugh Jackman. It's also got Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, um, Michael Caine. Trying to think anyone else really big. There's a famous musician who David Bowie. He's in it. I for the like longest time I couldn't think of his name, but yeah, it's a very good movie about two rival magicians who were once friends, but during one of the acts, something goes wrong, and they then become rivals and they compete against each other, and it's a very violent like ways of competing against each other. There's a scene where one pulls a gun on the other one, shoots his finger off, um, and then the other guy basically, I wouldn't say he frames him per se. I mean, yeah, I guess he frames him for something and sends him to prison. And this movie again is also kind of plays out where it jumps around between time periods, and it might be a little bit confusing at first, but this was a movie. The first time I watched it, I was like, "Holy crap, that was great!" But I was like, I need to kind of like rewatch for the details, and then I'd rewatched it. Like I saw this on TV in like 2000. I don't know when it came out. We'll just say 2008. So I saw it on like TV in 2010. Like 2 years later, watched it again, and I've probably seen this 5 times total. I just rewatched this last month. I bought it on 4K like earlier in the year and was like, I never got to watching it, so let's rewatch it. And it's still, for me, very good. And it's in the top 5 for me. Next at number 4 was actually number 3 for me until recently. That's Dunkirk. For the first time I watched this, it blew me away because I saw it in theaters. And if IMAX or whatever you call it, XD is what the theater by me calls it, Cinemark XD, or all those different terms for just louder and bigger screen. I was very impressed by this movie. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is one of the best horror movies ever. Bought it, and I've watched it time and time again since, and I still like it a lot, but nothing has even come close to compare to the initial experience of this movie. So for me, it's kind of dropped a little bit. So it falls at number 4, which is still very good. But at one point, this was number 3. I'm a really big like World War II movie guy. Like I've watched a lot of them. Saving Private Ryan, if you were to ask me what is my favorite like film, that's my favorite movie or film. I say movie and film movies kind of entertainment. Film is something I watch for the, I don't know what the word is, like the education of something, or just it being more than just a regular movie. So, but yeah, Dunkirk, well, is still one of my favorites, but it's not quite up as high as now upon repeat viewings. It's like, okay, it was the sounds of the airplanes and the bombs dropping and the gunfire just was like very realistic. And honestly, like the first time I watched this, got me so like hyped while watching it. I was like so excited and was like locked in for whatever this is, 2 hours, and I didn't like for like a minute even be like looking at my phone or anything. And it was amazing the first time I watched it, and it's just repeat viewings have kind of diminished it a little bit. If you're not sure, Dunkirk is it's so there's this channel that separates France and England. The English during World War II were in France trying to help them stop the blitzkrieg of the German army, but they needed to retreat and go back over the channel, and they were on these beaches. Meanwhile, the Germans are bombing them, destroying their escape across in boats, with U-boats, submarines, and it takes takes place over the course of like 3 days or something, and it follows like different characters in different situations. Some person on the beach, which is I believe called the Mole. Someone on the submarine, or not the submarine, in the on like the boat, like civilian boats, bringing people, trying to save some British, because they kept getting their like big ships just destroyed by U-boats and planes and things. And then the third one is the pilot, or the three pilots, but you really only get to know one of them really well and another one close. But yeah, it's a really good movie. Still recommend it highly. But it would have been a number three also if it wasn't for. So I mentioned at the very beginning that there was a movie that had absolutely blew me away, and that's Tenet. Um, Now I don't see myself, unless he directs like a Bond movie, ever putting those other two Batman movies, Batman Begins and Dark Knight, higher. Bond movies are my favorite movies if they're done right, or if they're done how I enjoy them, I guess I should say. For me, pretty much no movies can like beat that. Um, and Tenet was like the closest thing of his movies that I've seen to date that reminded me of a Bond movie. Now, it's like if you took a Bond movie, the ideas of a Bond movie, like espionage and spies, and some villain that's got some like end of the world plan, and then threw it in with a Christopher Nolan story and time travel. And I hadn't seen this until last week, and I was, the movie starts, and usually when a movie's like starting, I check my phone just right before, I'm just like, see if there's anything I want to look at while this movie's like kind of going through like the opening titles. And it just kind of like went through it so fast that I was like responding to a text, and like all I heard was like the orchestra pickup of like these violins, or the whatever instruments, I don't know. And then all of a sudden I hear gunshots, and I was like, holy shit, this movie's like 10 seconds in and I'm already hearing gunshots. I like dropped my phone and I'm like super focused in, and there's just this big like epic battle that takes place in this opera house for like 10 minutes that kept my focus for the whole rest of the movie, and I didn't even look and finish the text I had sent, and I was just like, holy shit, this movie's awesome. I know a lot of people found this to be confusing. I was like expecting, I was like, am I getting it, or am I not getting it and thinking I am? And then at the end, it's like, I'm pretty sure I understood that completely. I was like, what was like, I understand maybe some details were a little confusing, and I'm going to have a hard time explaining it. But I didn't find it like, oh, I don't understand what's going on. I fully grasped like the idea of what everything that was going on. Basically, it's about somebody, there's a main villain played by Kenneth Branagh, and he's trying to basically end the world or life as we know it by stopping time, and or just I don't know how else to say it, but he's using a device that controls time, and he just wants to end time. And so he can go, or this. There's these. They're called inversions. There's these like tubes or these little things that they go through. That when you go through, so we're moving forward through time. If you go through into it forward, you come out, and time is still like moving forward on that side, but you're moving like back through time. So everything you're doing, there's a scene where you see for the first time of him doing it. He steps in a puddle, and instead of the puddle, like your foot going down and then it coming up, like the water is up and then goes sinks into the puddle, which was kind of cool. And there's a scene where like a car, instead of flipping, like it gets hit, and instead of flipping towards the direction like where force would push it, it like pulls it towards the car, and it's flipping in reverse, and it's pretty cool. Like I said, I'm a big James Bond fan, and this movie and so many scenes, I was like, this is like James Bond. I was like, am I the only one that like thinks this? And I'm like, I know he's a big Bond fan, and I know there's scenes in other movies of his, like in The Dark Knight Rises, he takes the scene with the plane at the beginning, the inverted plane. That's actually from License to Kill. That's where that started, and he wanted to use that. And this just feels like he was like, I want to make a spy movie, have elements of James Bond, but throw my own kind of like twist on it. So for me, right now, I feel like maybe is a little bit too unfair to movies like Dunkirk that I've seen probably 6 times now, and I've only seen Tenet once. But I didn't even finish the movie. I was like still like 30 minutes left, and I was like, I'm ordering this 4K and watching it as soon as it comes in. I only watched this like last Wednesday. It's not even a full week, and I want to watch it again. And I've been like not shutting up about it with my friends. I'm like, guys, you gotta watch this. And like, there's a lot of my friends that are just like, I'm not even really into movies. And I'm like, there's like some that are, but the one I was like, dude, I don't even care if you're not into movies. You gotta watch this shit. He's like, I'm not gonna watch it. But either way, really great movie. I know a lot of people actually hate this one, and I know a lot of people love it. It seems like there's kind of a lot of in between, but a lot of people seem to like. I've seen a lot online of this movie's like the worst. I've seen a lot of people say that this one's one of his best. For me, just like the filmmaking aspect of it, the one scene where he's fighting the guy. I don't want to tell you who it is, but he's fighting someone, and he's fighting him in for him it's he's moving forward, but that person is like throwing punches in reverse, or like he's moving back through time. And then when you see it again through that person's perspective, it's the opposite. And it's just like interesting to see how it plays out like both ways. And I don't know. I just think that the filmmaking and like boats are moving, like, so like if the boat's going this way, it's really going like this way. And the camera, it's just what he's doing is he flies the camera. I think he has it here, so it makes it look like when the camera pans out, that when it starts to, he really is like panning out, but the camera flies in the scene, and the boat's going backwards. He just reversed the shot, but it just looks so like natural, like it's actually doing that. That it's because like people are doing things, and they're moving through time regularly, but the things in the background aren't. And it's just like, I was like watching all these details going on throughout. I'm like, holy shit, how's he doing all this? And yeah, I've just been in love with this movie ever since. I'll stop talking about it now just because, but yeah, really good. Comes in at number 3 for me. And then number 2 is Batman Begins. Really, you could interchange 1 and 2 at any time for me. I'm just going to bring them both up because not like I'm going to surprise anyone here. But yeah, both of these movies are among my favorite movies like ever. I saw Batman Begins when it like I think I said it where I rented it back whenever my grocery store had like VHSs and DVDs when I was a kid, and it had like just come out, and I was a huge fan of Batman, and I was like, okay, we'll check this out. You know, I had seen all like the older ones, and was like, this one looks a little darker, and then I watched it, and I'm like, this is much darker, and this is everything I like about Batman, and so Batman Begins was like what kind of started like me. I don't know how to say it. I wouldn't even say really getting to Batman because that was actually the animated series, but what was like, okay, this is what I want Batman to be. And it seems like every Batman movie since this and The Dark Knight has tried to copy something from that, whether that was the Ben Affleck version or Robert Pattinson's. And um, I just think The Dark Knight is just one of those movies that it's not even like a superhero movie. It's just like a really damn good movie. You don't even have to be like a fan of Batman. It's just entertaining. Like, I know people that don't like superheroes. My one friend doesn't like superhero movies whatsoever, and I was like, dude, you gotta watch this. And I was like, I hate to like force you to watch this movie, but it's like this isn't just like you know a regular Spider-Man or a regular Iron Man or whatever. I was like, this is like some really good shit. And honestly, like I'm not that big into superhero movies. I've always loved Batman, and I liked other superheroes a little bit here and there, but like these two Batman movies were like what I want of a superhero movie, or at least Batman. Christian Bale is one of my favorite actors, and you got like Gary Oldman, who I knew from the first movie I saw him in as a kid was Air Force One, and then like Harry Potter. So I was like, oh yeah, I know him, and so movies like that really got me into like collecting movies. Like honestly, I remember very vividly some of the very first DVDs that I like really bought, and I went out and was like, as soon as I saw The Dark Knight, I remember exactly who I went with, when every little detail. Oh, my cousin, and uh, he's like, I had seen this like last week, and he's like, it's really good. He's like, I think you'll like it, and I was like, well, I really like Batman Begins, so and like he completely undersold it to me and on purpose. And then I saw it, and I was like, dude. He's like, yeah. He's like, I purposely did that. I was like, Jackie, that movie's awesome. And yeah, I watched that movie on DVD before I got Blu-rays and 4Ks. Like, I'm not even exaggerating when I probably say 15 times. These two just, I one time watched them back to back, and it was just great. So yeah, this is my ranking. I think this is probably how it would go right now. I could see, Tenet and Dunkirk switching at some point, but I think Dunkirk has just kind of had the unfortunate. I've seen it now a few times, and it's not quite as good since the very first time, but I think this is all pretty accurate. I would maybe switch up Oppenheimer and Insomnia, possibly, but I think Oppenheimer is definitely the better film. So yeah, I think that's accurate, and I'd like to hear what you guys think. What's your ranking? I know I kind of rambled on about some of these, Tenet especially, but I just loved that movie. I want to hear what you guys think of all these movies and what's your ranking. Like I said, I can't promise I'll keep doing stuff like this. If I find something that catches my interest, maybe I'll do it here and there. But I was kind of for a while forcing myself to make stuff, and now after things in life going on, just kind of lost all interest, and I wanted to focus on fixing those things. So I just had some time. I don't have to do anything today, and was like, you know what? I've been wanting to talk about this movie, even if I'm talking about it technically to myself, to my computer. At least I'm talking about it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you guys soon.